If you live in or come from Europe, you will know that the UK is not as strong as it used to be. It's not as powerful as it used to be. But if we look at the history of the UK, it has been a very strong and very influential country. Sometimes for positive reasons, sometimes negative reasons. But what I want to focus on in today's video is phrases that have specifically come from traditional jobs that people in the UK used to do. Now, a lot of these jobs are no longer existent. They are null or void, or they don't exist anymore, or they're not relevant to today's society, so they have become obsolete. Some fantastic words for you there. I want you to be able to use this video for a couple of reasons. The first is as a listening test. The second is just to learn a bit of interesting information about England or the UK. And the third is probably you will find some phrases or vocabulary in this video that you didn't know before or weren't using before. So you can use this video in a number of ways, and I hope it's helpful. And if this is your first time seeing me, please subscribe. I make videos for intermediate to advanced level English learners. So let's get started. Now, interestingly, surnames in the UK used to come from someone's occupation, their profession, their job. So for example, the most popular surname in the UK is Smith. And Smith is a shortening of blacksmith, which if you don't know, a blacksmith is someone that works with metal. Nowadays we have factories and giant teams that work with metal. But originally in the UK, one person in each village was very, very good at working with metal and could create whatever you needed out of metal. Typically horseshoes, actually, because of course we had horses, not cars. That's the same with baker. Baker is not so common anymore as a last name in England, but it comes from people that would bake, were bakers. So our first phrase is to pull the wool over someone's eyes. To pull the wool over someone's eyes. Any ideas what this means? If so, let me know in the comments. To pull the wool over someone's eyes means to deceive them in some way, to not be completely honest with them. And this comes from when people that sold wool, which is the fabric, the textile that comes off of sheep and can be turned into fabric to make clothes. If the wool had defects, now a defect means something wrong with it. If the wool wasn't perfect, it wasn't the highest quality, it had defects in it, the people that sold the wool would brush it in a certain way so you couldn't see the wool. So they were pulling the wool over the broken part, the imperfect part, so you couldn't see it and they could still sell it for the same price. So we now have to pull the wool over someone's eyes to mean to deceive, to lie to not be honest with someone. To get the sack. This has been replaced with to be fired. Nowadays, if you lose your job, someone tells you you are no longer working here anymore, we refer to this as being fired from your job. But originally, and very much in British culture, we would say, I got the sack, or someone got the sack. And this is because when you used to lose your job, years and years ago, you would be given a sack with all your possessions in, things for you to take home. For example, if you worked at a factory, you would have shoes, you would have a jacket, you would have gloves, and all those things would be put in a sack, which is a brown bag, and you would be given this sack. So you got the sack. To be on the clock. Now maybe you can guess this one. It's quite an easy one. But to be on the clock, nowadays, we have technology and automated systems that know when employees are working and when they're not working. But originally, we didn't have those, and there would be a machine on the wall that you would put your piece of paper, your name card in, and it would stamp that card at the time that you put it in. And when you leave for the day, it would stamp it again. So at the end of the month, your boss, your manager can see exactly what time you came in and exactly what time you left. And this was how you were paid. So to be on the clock means to be in your job, at work, working, being paid to do your job. So nowadays, someone might say, oh, I'm not on the clock at the moment, meaning I'm currently not being paid, so I can't help you. Or I can't do what you're asking me until I'm being paid. You sometimes also hear people saying things like, to clock out, can you clock out? And again, this just means note that your day is finished, however you do that. Before, it would be to put your time card in and get the time. But nowadays, it can be anything. It can be just leaving the building. You might have to log into a system and tell the system that you're leaving, you're logging out, you're clocking out. Be on the clock means to be scheduled and working and being paid for your work at that time. To muck in. To muck in. I covered this in another video, which I'm going to link over here, because a lot of our idioms and phrasal verbs come from jobs previously. And of course, English people used to be sailors and farmers. So to muck in comes from farmers, and muck usually refers to mess from animals or mess from the crops that you've pulled up. Your farm is a bit messy, we would say muck, and to muck in means to join the group and help clean. Share the work, share the labor-intensive work. It's a messy job, it's a job that no one wants to do, so if we muck in together, it will be quicker. Nowadays, we just mean it as everyone in the team has to work hard to get this finished. To turn in, to turn in. Now, actually, very interestingly, I asked ChatGPT to help me with the meaning of this one, and it gave me something completely unrelated. So this is just a quick reminder that when you're using AI to help you, read what it says and check that it's actually correct information. To turn in, originally, if you work for a factory or you worked for construction, a building site, the tools that you would use to complete your job would not belong to you. Back in those days, people in the UK didn't have much money. So people didn't have their own tools. They had to borrow from the company. So at the end of the day, you would turn in, you would hand in all the tools that you've used that day. Now, when we use the phrase turn in, it means either to go to bed, I'm going to turn in now, this is the end of my day, or to hand in a project or assignment. I'm turning in my assignment, I'm handing it over to you. To break the ice. Now, everyone knows this because it's used in a lot of online English videos, and I use it in a lot of my videos. But the origin is very interesting. So as I said, a lot of English people, people from the UK, it wasn't just England, a lot of people from the UK were sailors. That was their primary job. Now, when a boat was breaking the ice, it was doing exactly that. Breaking the ice so the boat could pass and keep traveling. And that is what we are doing when we break the ice in a company with a group of people. We are breaking this barrier so we can keep the conversation going. So that's where it comes from. To toe the line, to toe the line. Now this just means to follow instructions. If someone says we need to toe the line here, or you need to make sure you're towing the line, it means we need to follow instructions, we need to follow the rules, the protocol. But this comes from the Navy, and when the Navy traveled on wooden boats, not the plastic or what's it called? What's the product called? It's not plastic, it's like a mixture of glass and plastic. Plexiglass, I think it's called, or I'll look it up, 1 second. Fiberglass, not plexiglass. Fiberglass. So nowadays, a boat is usually all white and you don't see the lines of the wood. But back then, all boats had wood going in the same direction, creating these lines on the ship. And to tow the line was when these sailors, these people that were in the Navy, had to line up along these wooden lines and listen to instruction. So that's why it nowadays just means to listen to instruction, to follow instructions. Now, I have included this one because it's very interesting, but actually you don't need to use this because it's so old-fashioned. We used to have a job called knocker-upper. Now, a knocker-upper, people didn't have alarm clocks back in those days. They didn't even have clocks in their home. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have batteries. We didn't have clocks. So someone needed to know the time and go and tell everyone what the time was. So the knocker-upper would know what time you have to go to work, and he would come, or she, would knock on your door at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever time, and let you know, hey, you need to get up because you have work today. And we have a phrase which is knock up, which means to come round. It's similar to pop over, to wake someone up, to call on someone, but it's so old-fashioned, I wouldn't recommend using this. And it has a very different meaning in American English, which if you're interested in the difference between British English and American English, I will link a video. I always go the wrong side. I will link a video here where myself and another American teacher went through some of the differences between American and British English, and knock up is in there. Now, I want to end this on some really interesting jobs that no longer exist in the UK. I find this very interesting. I ran a summer group one year with children of about 12 years old, where we learnt about the different jobs that they used to have in the UK. And most of these jobs stopped existing because of technology. So technology came around, different forms of technology, and people couldn't do these jobs anymore. So the first is a town crier, and actually when I was growing up in England, our town did have a town crier. A town crier is someone that can speak very loudly, and they go around the town and they tell everyone the news. So this was before newspapers, before news stations, and very loudly tell everyone the news of the day, the news of the week. If someone had died, they would tell you. If someone had got married, they would tell you. Town crier, they told everyone the news. A rag and bone man. Now, if you like music, there's a very, very good American singer called Rag and Bone Man. He's fantastic. I recommend him if you like listening to music. But a rag and bone man originally was someone that would find or go through rubbish and find things that they could sell. So if I threw a load of things on the street, the rag and bone man would go through and find bits and pieces that he could sell on, like metal or maybe clothing that he could maybe sell. So they have all these random things like rags, which is another word for pieces of cloth, and bones. Of course, he didn't have bones, but he probably could sell bones if they were interesting. He could sell them to hospitals or museums so that they could investigate them and do experiments on them. Mudlarks. Now, this is specifically London because a mudlark, the bottom of the Thames River is mud. And the mudlarks would walk along the Thames River and try and find things that people had dropped or things that they could find in the mud that they could again sell. So they spent all their time searching through the mud. A factory lector. Now this is so interesting because we never used to have radios, TV, YouTube, podcasts, iPods, iPad, whatever. We never had any of that. So how did people stay entertained when they were working 12 hours a day? And if you work in a factory or you work in a company that has factories, you will know that working in the factory is very, very repetitive. You do the same thing all day. But they didn't have music. They didn't have interesting things to listen to. So someone was hired to read books, read the newspaper to these factory workers. So they would sit at the front of the factory and they would have to loudly read a book to these people so that they had something to listen to whilst they were working. Very interesting. Chimney sweeps. I've got 2 more for you. Chimney sweeps. You may know this one if you watch a lot of old English films. A chimney sweep, a chimney is the thing over a fire that takes the smoke out of your house. It's very dangerous to light a fire in your house if all the smoke is kept inside. So this chimney takes that smoke out of the house, but these get very, very dirty. And a chimney sweep was usually a child, unfortunately. They would go up inside the chimney because they were the only ones that could fit, and they would clean everything in the chimney. And my final one, I included this one because it's just so interesting to think about now and back then. So now you walk into a room, you turn on the light switch. You wake up in the middle of the night, you need some water, but you don't want to wake up your family by turning on the lights. So you turn on the torch on your phone and find the water that you were looking for. Back then, we didn't have that. We didn't have electricity. So someone was hired to be a lamp lighter. And their job was every night when it got dark was to go around the city or the town or the village and light every single lamp in the town with fire or oil or matches, whatever it was that they used. I once read a very interesting article about a job in Japan. If I can find it, I'll include it down below. But it was something related to a specific kind of oyster or shellfish, and women trained to hold their breath for a very long time so they could go down to the bottom of the ocean and find these oysters, these shellfish. And people don't do that anymore. They don't train to hold their breath that long. So that job is actually dying out. So I would love to know if you have something like that in your country, a job that is dying out, that doesn't exist anymore, or you can see that less and less people are starting to do that kind of job. Let me know down below. If you are interested in history, then this video was probably very interesting for you. Thank you for watching as always. Thank you for liking and subscribing. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on what we went through in today's video, and I will see you next time. Have a fantastic week. Bye-bye.